What I'm going to do here is a tweak to the tree sculpting video, which is adding in a mirror modifier for the sake of sculpting, for instance, a character. I'm going to step through the basic steps, adding in the specific stuff necessary for, again, sculpting a character. So starting with some kind of a mesh, doesn't really matter what, since we're just going to be merging into a single vert. I'm just going to choose a cube, tab into edit mode. You may just instantly go into edit mode. I have a pie menu that does it, and then just hit Alt M and you'll get the pop-up. You're going to merge at center. That just merges any and all verts into a single vert. You need to go back to object mode again. I have a pie menu, but you may just have it set up with Blender's defaults where you just jump right back into object mode. You can always tell up here at this little drop down what mode you're in. Now that I have that single vert selected in object mode, I'm going to go over to this right bottom panel, look for the modifiers or modifier properties section. Let me just expand that a little bit, and I'm going to create 3 modifiers. Add modifier. Let's actually start this time with a mirror modifier. Now the order you create these in is important, although what you need to know is that you can reorder them over in this thing by using these up and these down arrows for each of these modifiers. I just collapsed that just to make this a little tidier over here. Ultimately, you'll just want to have the same order that I've got for this to work well. So now I'm going to go to add modifier. I'm going to add in a skin modifier. Just to remind you, what this modifier does is it's going to take, say, a single vert and give it some actual thickness or dimensionality. Again, I'm going to collapse that one. And finally, I'm going to add in a third modifier, a subdivision surface. And remember, all this does is it just collapses. It's like Smooth in Maya, it collapses it and quadruples the number of faces so that you start to get a rounded form. You may enjoy increasing your viewport resolution or subdivisions to get a little more roundness. Okay. Again, if your mirror was somewhere else, you can see now I've got it in my middle slot or the second slot. I can just again go to this, up, and now the mirror is at the top of the modifier stack. Now the mirror modifier is the one that definitely needs a critical addition, which is you want to turn on bisect X. What this does is it's going to get rid of any geometry that sort of overlaps in the middle. Basically, it's just going to slice your model in half and then mirror it over cleanly. Okay. Now, I'm a person that works on the right side in the front view, and then the mirror happens over on the left side. If your brain is the opposite, which is fine, you're just going to want to turn on flip X so that you can work on the left side and then it mirrors over to the right. But again, that's not the way my brain works. So that's all the settings that you need for the mirror. You may also enjoy going over to your skin modifier. You don't have to do this, and turning on smooth shading. That just gets rid of the hard edges here in this skin modifier. Okay, now that we've done this, you can start blocking out your character. Remember, this is meant to be the first stage, basically getting your large proportions and some of the medium-sized proportions of your character. I personally like to think about this first sphere as being somewhere in the torso, maybe even the lower torso or pelvis, somewhere thereabouts. Just like with the tree, you're going to tab now back into edit mode. Okay? And you have a single vert right there. Remember, that's all the real geometry that's there. Everything else here is just a sort of preview of geometry. Later on, we are going to be converting this to actual geometry, actual polygons. And I'm just going to quickly go through the steps that I did with the tree. I can start hitting E to extrude, and you can see I start to pull this up or down. I can, if I want, start hitting keys like the Z, and that allows me to just pull up and down, for instance, in the Z-axis or up and something like that. And so basically you can see I've got sort of a bean shape that's going to be sort of my torso. Okay. Now you may also enjoy turning on either X-ray up here. That makes it a little easier to see your verts and the edges in between. And actually that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to grab both of these verts. If I right click now and go to subdivide, what that did, oops, that sure isn't working. Try it one more time. Select both of those. Right click. Subdivide. Now I should have. Of course, it's not working. It seems to be something funny going on here, and I don't know what it is. Well, let's just keep on going then. We'll skip the subdividing for now. It's probably going to work for you. So I've got those two things. Let me just grab, I'm just going to do this a different way. I'm going to pull this down. There is definitely a vert in there. Oh, that's weird. Yeah, that's where it's working fine. Something funny in the front view. So you can see by adding in that middle vertex, now I can start to, I just jumped to my side, but you can start to establish the curvature of your spine, for instance. Now another reminder, every one of these verts, you can choose Control A, just let go of the Control A, and then if you drag, you can see you can start to scale these different verts. And so I can start to get a little more shaping of that center part. Okay. So I'm not going to do all this character, but you can see maybe I can start to establish the upper torso and the shoulders, just scaling a little bit. Again, E, you may want to just pull outwards, something like this. Start to establish the length of the arms. Maybe go down here. E. Start to establish, and you can see I am starting to get some of that funny business with the geometries. You always have to be careful with the location and the scaling to sort of make sure it's not kind of collapsing onto itself or doing anything weird like that. Oops. Again, E, I can start to establish the legs. You can see there's again something funny happening over here with the shoulders now, but usually if you just, you can see, push things around a little bit, it kind of fixes that, okay? Again, we'll just quickly block out the sort of basic forms. E, pull forward in the Y-axis, now just hit Y so that it just moves forward. Again, go back up here. E to extrude, Z to pull up, and so on. Okay. So once you establish all those things, fingers, toes as needed, if you have a big nose or big ears, you may consider doing that at this stage, but you could also just wait and save that for the sculpting phase. But again, you're just establishing all the largest proportions here. Once you do all that, what I like to do is go over here and rename this. I'm going to call this, whoops, turn off my caps lock. Maybe call this skin. Okay, this is, remember, just a preview. This is not actual geometry yet. I need to now convert it to actual geometry. Now, just to remind you, I have my space bar set up so that when I hit my space bar, it brings up this search. I've covered that in another video. And I'm going to search for convert. You'll see I'm looking for object. It's not working in my case, of course. Try it one more time. Convert to, it's the top one right there. That's what I wanted. And then I want mesh from. Okay, I have an extra plugin that's adding in some extra elements you probably don't have. And once I do that, I also like to go down here before I click off to convert to, and check off keep original. You'll see over here that gives me it keeps the original, which I need to rename again. Oh, I do have the correct name. And then there's the new one that is the actual geometry. So I'll just change this to something like base mesh. Okay. You'll notice if I go into edit mode for this, it looks very different. This is actual geometry with actual polygons and all that business. Great. So this is the one that you can actually sculpt on. I'm going to go ahead and just hide my original skin. The idea is I like to keep that just in case I need to just go back. It's very simple just to check that off earlier, just to have that available. Okay, now I'm ready to move on to the sculpting phase. Now, just to remind you, when I go over here again into edit mode, you see how we don't have any overlapping or intersecting geometry in the middle? That was because we had turned on X in the bisect back in the mirror modifier earlier. If you don't do that, it's going to be a mess. Switch over to your sculpting. Now you're ready to start refining this whole thing. Okay. This is a great time to turn on your Dyntopo. Dyntopo, remember, is this dynamic topology that allows you to add or take away. Blender will just take care of it for you, add or take away extra polygons, triangles, as needed. So I just turn on Dyntopo. I'm going to pull out this thing right there so you can see both lines. I like to use this tool right here, the snake hook tool. This is great for pushing and pulling large proportions. And you can see I can start to push and pull these parts around. By default, you should have symmetry turned on in your tool settings, X mirror, should I say. That's going to be, again, necessary, useful for your characters. And now I can, for instance, jump to different views. You can see I've got, I like to work in my right view. I've got a very straight up and down character. So I might start to establish more of the curvature, and again, I might do more of this back at the skin phase. You can smooth stuff, but again, I'm doing a lot of my work, certainly at this point, with this snake hook for establishing those large proportions. And so again, that's the basics of sculpting your character. And then once you like the result, you go back to modeling, you export this as an OBJ, and you can move on to Dyntopo. Okay, hopefully that was helpful.